All right, thank you for listening to The Clean Finish, brought to you by the OSC Podcast Network. If you're listening to the show on YouTube, please show some love and subscribe to our channel, the OSC Podcast Network. And the same will be appreciated if you're catching the show via Apple Podcasts. Please leave comments, reviews, any feedback that will help us produce a better show for you guys to listen to. Be on the lookout for other shows brought to you by the OSC Podcast Network, including the PTGC. The very first episode is up and running, and it features a pretty interesting discussion about Star Wars that I think offers a unique take on the Star Wars universe that fans of the franchise are going to enjoy. All right, with that aside, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Joining me on the line for the third straight episode, he's becoming a regular here on The Clean Finish, the homie Ant-Man. What's good, my man?
I'm doing well, man. Triple R, yeah, man. We go good together. I don't mind it at all.
So on the last episode, after we wrapped up our conversation on Mayweather and Conor McGregor, we touched on a few things WWE, and we mentioned how many pay-per-views or network specials they run now. And you know, I'm going to stop right there. What do you want to call them? Because I find myself always tripping over my words trying to figure out what to call these damn shows.
Man, I still refer to them as pay-per-view. I know we ain't paying for it anymore technically, but they're still pay-per-views to me.
I'm with you. So pay-per-view it is. So we touched on an idea for a pod, and that was for us to redo the pay-per-view calendar. We talked about what shows we would get rid of and a few other things, and the conversation eventually evolved to a full-on fantasy booking session involving the talent. So that's what we're going to do here today. We took a look at both rosters and came up with our own power rankings for the men's division, women's division, and tag team division, and we're going to predict what matches we may see at Wrestlemania based on the current position and on the talents. So Ant, we looked over each other's rankings, and they were fairly close. Were you surprised?
No, because, I mean, you know, when we sat down and started looking at this, and you actually look at the rosters, you're like, damn, they really don't have enough for kind of two shows. But then when you think about them doing one show where they were both on live SmackDown and Raw, you're like, man, there's too many. It's too bloated. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation.
I felt the same way at first, but as I kept looking at both rosters, it surprised me how many guys we haven't seen lately. Guys like Dolph Ziggler, who just recently resurfaced, and Luke Harper, who hasn't been seen in a very long time. And I have no clue why, because he's so fucking good, man, especially for a big man. You don't realize how stacked the entire roster really is till you actually take a time to look at it. In your opinion, are they taking full advantage of all the talent they have?
No, I don't think so. And I think especially with the advent of NXT, they're bringing these guys up, and I don't even think they're using those guys properly all the time.
Another thing you can't help but notice is how thin the women's roster is as a whole. I mean, not even looking at it as individual brands now. I can take my women's rankings for both Raw and SmackDown, and I don't even have enough names to make a top 10. Do you think they would have been better off not splitting the women's division into two separate shows?
Yeah, I think they should have kept them as one women's division. And honestly, with how thin both Raw and SmackDown is, you can have them fighting on both shows just easily. And, you know, probably SmackDown, they'd be able to get more time on SmackDown than it would Raw. But I think one division chasing one belt, then you have more legitimate contenders. You wouldn't have Sasha Banks as a 4-time women's champion.
Oh, we're going to have to dig deeper in that on a future pod, because I think it's very interesting to see how championships are treated today as opposed to the past. It seems the further back in time you go, the more championships seems to matter, and title changes were pretty rare, and that's not the case today.
Yeah, it really not. I mean, when you think about it, and we could say this, talk to us about like another episode, like you said, you know, Honky Tonk was Intercontinental Champion for damn near I want to say it was 3-4 years that he consecutively. Now, obviously, there's more talent, there's more characters, there's more development. So obviously, a run like that won't be existent. But you know, these guys swap titles like it's nothing. They really bring the value of the title down.
Exactly, and we'll definitely talk about this in greater length on another episode. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off and get into the Clean Finish power rankings. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Raw, and coming in at number 1 is the Universal Champion, Brock Lesnar, and this should really go without explanation. He's the man, even though he's not there every single week, which I personally don't see as an issue and has helped keep him from getting stale. I have him at number 1, but not too far behind him is Braun Strowman at number 2. He's got the rocket strapped on him right now, and it amazes me when I look back on to when he first debuted and how awful he was then and how much he's come along, and we have to give a lot of credit to this man for making that help happen, and that's Roman Reigns, who I have at number 3. I got John Cena at number 4 with Samoa Joe rounding out the top 5, and number 6 we have Finn Balor, who I'll be speaking some more on later on in the show. The Miz at number 7, who's currently the Intercontinental Champion. Bray Wyatt at number 8. Jason Jordan squeezing in at number 9, and obviously that's based on the big angle, no pun intended, that he's involved with. And Enzo Amore coming in at number 10. A couple honorable mentions. Big Cass, who seemed to be on his way to big things before getting hurt. Your current Cruiserweight Champion, Neville. And I'm going to go ahead and give a shout out to the Drifter, Elias. We haven't seen a whole hell of a lot of him inside the ring, but the man has been prominently featured over the last few weeks, and I think they got plans for him. So, Ant-Man, go ahead and jump in and let me know what you think, homie.
So I liked your list. We agree almost in the top 4. I think top 5 we're pretty much the same. Where we differ is on the bottom half of the roster. I think Elias has potential. I didn't include him in my honorable mentions. I think he has potential. I just don't like the character that they're going with him now. The drifter with the guitar singing songs. I just don't think it works, and I don't see how he can be a top heel or a top face using that gimmick. Unless he plans on smashing people upside the head like Jeff Jarrett did with his guitars, I really don't see it. So my Raw singles top 10, I have Brock Lesnar because, he is the Beast incarnate, and like you said, they're booking him as just the threat of Brock Lesnar. And credit to Paul Heyman. I mean, that's really all Paul Heyman in his ability to speak on the microphone. I have Braun Strowman. There's no way you see SummerSlam and don't think that Braun Strowman is clearly being positioned as the next guy. Roman Reigns is my number 3. Samoa Joe is my number 4. John Cena is my number 5. And then this is where you and I differ a little bit. I have The Miz at number 6. I have Jason Jordan at number 7, only because the current storyline with Kurt Angle being his biological father and, giving him opportunities. I have Finn Balor at number 8, Bray Wyatt at number 9, and I have Neville at number 10, because he's the self-proclaimed king of the cruiserweights. And for the most part, he's backed that up. In my honorable mention, I have Big Cass, who, just injured himself, and Enzo Amore, who's transitioned into 205 Live and could potentially, add more pop on the microphone to the 205 and the cruiserweights.
Were you kind of surprised with me having Enzo in over Neville, despite Neville being a champion? I think right now WWE is banking on Enzo to give that cruiserweight division a much-needed boost.
No, you could clearly and easily swap either or and make a strong case for either or, and there's really no wrong way about it. So I'm with you. I'm okay with that.
Let's keep it moving with the women's division. Coming in at number 1, I have the women's champion Alexa Bliss with Sasha Banks number 2, Bayley number 3, and Nia Jax closing out at number 4. And I want to mention Asuka really quick. WWE has confirmed through a statement that was released regarding her injury that she'll be promoted to the main roster when she comes back, and she'll be coming to Raw. So we're going to definitely have to be on the lookout for that. So let's go ahead and address the fact that I only managed to come up with 4 names here. Man, unfortunately, in my opinion, after such a strong 2016 for the women, they've taken a few steps back, and not necessarily to the point they once were, where the 2-3 minute match on Raw was the norm, but the focus just doesn't seem to be the same as it was this time last year, especially when Sasha and Charlotte were doing what they were doing, main event and Raws on a current basis. How did your women's division list shape up?
So our top top 4 is the exact same order: Alexa Bliss, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Nia Jax. My honorable mentions, I had Asuka, which also rumored to debut. It's pretty much a done deal. But I had Emma on there, and Emma's new personality, new character as the proclaiming that she's the one that started the Women's Revolution and she's the victory over Mickey James. I think could be something that pushes her up I don't know necessarily into the title scene, but definitely elevates her status.
Do you think Asuka going to Raw is the right move to make as opposed to going to SmackDown? Because I'm not 100% convinced that it is.
If she comes to Raw, she's basically going to become the Charlotte, what Charlotte was last year, and dominate that division. I just really, I don't think SmackDown is a better place for her just yet, other than the fact that Charlotte's on SmackDown, and her and Charlotte are probably matches that are, that's one of those matches that I had booked later on that we'll talk about later on. But I think Raw's probably the right place for her in regards that Raw's a 3-hour show. They're the bigger of the two brands. They're more highlighted, and I think that's probably a better place for her. She might be able to elevate that women's division again to where it was at this point last year.
I think there are a couple good matches for her on Raw. Sasha obviously comes to mind, along with Bayley, but I don't know how she'll match up with the other women on the brand. My main concern, though, is the microphone, and I think we may see her have the same problem Nakamura's having over on SmackDown. What do you think about that?
Probably 100%. And although she's more willing to talk or at least more versed at talking than Shinsuke is, she's going to run into the same issues. And that's just something that's going to develop with time. Or hell, why don't we exploit that character? I remember when Mr. Fuji used to come with his with Yokozuna and stuff like that, and he would do all the talking. Why not just have a translator there doing all the talking?
I don't know if that'll work if you want to keep her babyface, though. Having a translator just screams heel move to me, but if that's where they want to go with her, then that could definitely work. But do you think having another duo where one does all the talking for someone will come off too similar to Heyman and Lesnar? You think WWE will want to keep that exclusive to just those two?
And I get that, and I understand that you want to make that exclusive and special, but let's be honest, there's only one Paul Heyman.
And speaking of only one, pretty good segue. The tag team division is another one of those cases where it may have benefited WWE just leaving that hole instead of splitting them into two separate rosters, because much like the women, there's just not a whole lot of talent to choose from. I obviously have coming in at number 1 on the Raw side, the current Raw Tag Team Champions, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, Sheamus Cesaro at number 2, the Hardys coming in at number 3, and I'm going to go ahead and slide in the Club at number 4, but they're not doing a whole lot with those guys. And, it sucks that injuries have sidelined the Revival for as long as long as it has, because those guys are so good. But Chance, do you know which one is hurt right now?
Yeah, so Dash was injured first, and then as soon as he came back, Dawson got injured.
Matt, dude, those two can't catch a break, and it sucks because they're such a kick-ass team.
Yeah, they can't catch a break. And those guys were young tag teams. It reminded me of Arn and Ole Anderson. Not very tall dudes, but stocky and would come put a whooping on people.
Okay, so based on these rankings, we're going to try to figure out what we think we'll see at WrestleMania. And I just want to make it clear, these aren't the matches that Ant-Man and I would make. These are simply the matches we think the WWE will make based on where the talents are currently at, as far as their booking. So there's a pretty good chance that we're going to be way off on some of this shit. I mean, there's still plenty of time between now and Mania, and things can change a number of ways between now and then. But with that said, I do think we're headed towards the rematch that I don't want to see. I don't know if anyone else wants to see it, between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. I think we see a repeat of WrestleMania 31 with Lesnar coming in as champion. Maybe we get a curveball and somehow Reigns is champion by this point. Maybe by then the Shield have come back together, and maybe as a band of heels and Lesnar comes in as the challenger, which will certainly facilitate to the crowd reaction because no one is booing Lesnar in that matchup right there. But I doubt it. I think we're just going to get straight up Reigns coming in trying to conquer the beast Brock Lesnar. I think we'll also see Braun Strowman and John Cena in one of the featured matches, along with Kurt Angle making his return to the ring against Jason Jordan, who I think will turn on Angle for some reason to lead up to this match. I think we'll see Finn Balor and The Miz probably in the Intercontinental Championship match. And I also see WWE writing out the Bayley-Sasha Banks story all the way to Mania for the Women's Championship. And I can see either one of them coming in as champion. I think the story is the same no matter who comes in with the title. And as far as the tag championship goes, I'm going to predict that they're probably going to do another multi-tag team match with Rollins and Ambrose coming in as the champions. And that's about the best I can come up with for now. And I mean, I haven't mentioned Samoa Joe, Bray Wyatt, and a couple other big names. I just don't see as of now where they're going to fit on the card. So, Ant, what did you come up with? And are we looking about the same so far?
Yeah, I think we some of our WrestleMania matches based on what's going on now, we're pretty close on. I have Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman, as for the Universal title with Strowman being the champion. I have Cena versus Samoa Joe. I got Kurt Angle versus Triple H, which has been long rumored now, but he still hasn't been cleared medically. And as a matter of fact, I think it was rumored for last WrestleMania. I have Batista facing the Beast incarnate Brock Lesnar. Rumor is Batista set to headline the Hall of Fame this year, and why not have the Animal versus the Beast incarnate? I have Jason Jordan versus The Miz. I think the storyline playing out with Kurt Angle being his father gives him that opportunity. And the fact that Miz feels like the Intercontinental is not being given the respect it deserves leads to maybe his son facing The Miz for the IC title. I have a fatal four-way for the women's title with Sasha versus Alexa Bliss versus Nia Jax versus Bayley, and I have Bayley holding the title leading into WrestleMania. And then I got the revival. Hopefully, if they can come back healthy, heading into Rollins and Ambrose. I think that the Lunatic Fringe and the Architect style plays well to Dash and Dawson coming in there with their old school light them up, spine buster them kind of personas. I think that match would bring down the house.
If we have a healthy Revival going in there against Rollins and Ambrose, that could be a pretty damn good match. I'm digging the shit out of that.
Yeah, and I fully expect that not all these matches are going to make the actual lineup. I expect probably the Intercontinental, maybe the SmackDown titles to be on a pre-show. And I didn't mention it before, but I don't know who's going to be in it, but I think Apollo Crews is going to win the Andre the Giant Battle Memorial.
Later on, when we go over our fantasy matchups, I'm going to run an idea I have for the Battle Royal that I'm curious to see what your take is on it. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and run down SmackDown. I have at number 1 current United States champion AJ Styles. He's been the clear-cut MVP on SmackDown since the start of the brand split. Kevin Owens in at number 2. And this may cause a little bit of controversy. I got Shane McMahon at number 3. I know he's not a wrestler, but nonetheless, he's been heavily featured in the main angle of the show between AJ and Owens, and they're clearly building towards something between Shane and Owens. I got Jinder coming in at number 4, despite being WWE champion. Shinsuke Nakamura at number 5, despite how shitty he's been booked recently. Baron Corbin, number 6. Randy Orton, 7. Rusev, 8. And recent NXT call-up Bobby Roode at number 9. And Sami Zayn closing it out at number 10. What did you have?
So our top 3 are basically the same. AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, Shane McMahon for everything that you've already said. Number 4 and down is where I differ. I have number 4 Shinsuke Nakamura. I have Bobby Roode actually at number 5. I have Jinder Mahal at number 6, Baron Corbin at number 7, Rusev at number 8, Randy Orton at number 9, and Aiden English at number 10. I just think he's been on the show a lot. I think clearly they have some sort of idea for him. They're just trying to figure out how to make it work. And then honorable mentions, I have Dolph Ziggler because, he's been MIA. And Sami Zayn. All we've seen of Sami Zayn is backstage interviews with the Power of Love that eventually led to a matchup that he lost, and the Kevin Owens looking to him to be the referee. So they need to figure out what they're doing with Sami Zayn. They're clearly wasting a talented guy. And, find a way to jump him. On SmackDown, he could clearly jump into the U.S. contention very easily, and then from there catapult him, maybe give him a 2-3 month trial as the WWE champion to see how he does with that. So, and at number 10 is kind of a crap shoot after that.
So the WWE champion not getting much love on both of our rankings. They're just not booking him strong enough, man.
Yeah, nowhere near enough for Jinder Mahal. And just, the guy's the champion. And especially when he's a champion, he's of Indian descent, and you're breaking into WWE India this month. It's just not as strong as a heel as I would like him to be.
All right, so the women's division playing out pretty much the same as Raw with only 4 worth mentioning. I have Carmella at number 1, first ever Miss Money in the Bank, and I don't think WWE gives her that honor to without having big plans for her. Natalya at number 2, who's the current women's champion. Naomi number 3, and despite being away from the title scene and not being involved in anything noteworthy in a while, I got Charlotte coming in at number 4. For honorable mentions, I mean, I could throw in Becky Lynch, Tamina, but neither one of them really doing much to write home about. How did you see it?
Yeah, so I wholeheartedly agree with you. I have Carmella number 1, Natalya number 2. I still have Charlotte at number 3, just because I know that she hasn't been used in a while, even when she was there on SmackDown. But that's for the simple fact that, come November, December, they turn it on. She's clearly she can take over that division at any point in time that she wants to. And then I have at number 4 Becky Lynch, Naomi. They're kind of interchangeable at this point. Becky Lynch, I think, is the better wrestler, but for whatever reason, it's just not being used very much. And then, as honorable mentions, I have Tamina and Lana. They have that new angle that they're working with, trying to, I guess, catapult Tamina into the contention. Basically making her the Nia Jax of SmackDown, and we'll see how that works out.
I'm not a fan of Tamina's look. What do you think they're going for there?
Honestly, I have no idea, because other than, the mean, she's obviously got that growl, that snarl, that look like, hey, don't mess with me. But the look itself, black leather, you got me on that one.
I don't get why she wrestles in her jacket. It looks so stupid. You can't even make the argument of it looking cool, like Roman Reigns' vest.
Honestly, I haven't even given. It's like she just rolled into the arena.
Well, whatever the hell they're going for with her, they need to fix it, because I think it's hurting her, because she's not terrible in the ring and she has a unique look. And I mean, I'm not talking ring gear here now. I'm talking about her physical features and her figure and her build compared to the other women. With her size and the right look, with the ring gear, I think her and Charlotte could have a potential of having a pretty good rivalry.
What they could do with her, and like I've said this before, is you've got the Usos. You've got Tamina. Last I checked, they were of Samoan descent. The Usos are heels right now. You lump in Tamina with the Usos, maybe bring in another person, and you create a little stable of heels, of Samoan heels, and just let them wreck shop. I guarantee you that would elevate her level of threat in the women's division tenfold, just by doing that.
So speaking of the Usos, I have them number 1 on the tag team rankings, and after that, New Day coming in at number 2. And then once you kind of put those 2 names to the side, there's really not a whole lot much more to look at. I mean, you can plug in Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable in at number 3. Breezango maybe at number 4. They've been doing their thing with the Fashion Police files, but again, I can't help but think they could have left this division as one bigger division as opposed to two smaller ones, similar to what we were talking about with the women.
Yeah, that's a good idea when you look at it, because, I honestly left my list at 3. I have the Usos, the New Day, and I have Benjamin and Gable, Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable on there. But honestly, I don't see them lasting very long as a tag team. And then my honorable mentions are Breezango, only because the Fashion Police skits are kind of hilarious. They were a little annoying at first, but they're kind of funny now. And I have the Hype Bros only because, they're the next guys that are kind of making any little waves. I think you have the potential, once he comes off injury, to have Luke Harper and Eric Rowan be a tag team again, and those guys would just be monsters. You had Aiden English and Simon Gotch, and of course the WWE releases Simon Gotch. So now you have this guy. You just have a lot of wrestlers who not any of them individually can shine as superstars, and they're just kind of floating around there. So I think probably leaving it as one division, competing on both shows, would have been the best idea to do with those guys too.
All right, let's go ahead and talk WrestleMania again. And man, I had a tough time predicting where we'll end up on the SmackDown side, with the exception of 2 matches. I'm 100% confident that we're going to see AJ Styles and Nakamura possibly for the WWE Championship. And that is why Nakamura was brought to SmackDown. They had a brief altercation at Money in the Bank, and they really haven't visited that issue since. And I think that's by design. You save that for WrestleMania. The second match that I think we'll see in some way, shape, or form is Asuka and Charlotte. I mean, it may have to go down as an interpromotional match if they end up on the different brands. And I think it can be pushed as one of the feature matches, like one of the top 4, maybe 5 matches. But outside of those two, I have no idea what else we'll see. I'm going to guess maybe Becky Lynch and Carmella for the women's championship. But, that could easily turn into another multi-person match. And, maybe for a curveball, I'm going to say we might see Big E in a singles match, maybe possibly against Baron Corbin for the U.S. championship. What do you got?
I've got a few more matches. I think that AJ Styles is going to be the WWE champion, but I think he's going to be facing Bobby Roode. I think that guy just oozes charisma. He's great in the ring. He's got a good look, and I think he's just going to catapult pretty quickly to the top of the SmackDown Live roster. I have Shinsuke Nakamura as the U.S. champion going against Baron Corbin. I think that's a good call for Baron Corbin, considering he's gotten some backstage heat lately. That's assuming he gets out of the doghouse. I have Shelton Benjamin and Chad Gable facing the Usos. But then again, I'm not 100% positive on that match because I don't think those two are going to last that long. I have Becky Lynch going against Carmella, and I have Carmella as the women's champion. And then some kind of other matches that I saw. I like the idea of the interpromotional one, so I kind of went that route. Went with Randy Orton versus Finn Balor, or Randy Orton maybe versus the Demon. Considering how Randy Orton was part of the Wyatt family, and then he himself broke away, had a match with the Eater of Worlds. I'm thinking, Randy Orton, the Viper taking on Demon, I think would be a marquee matchup that could garner some time. And then Jinder Mahal versus Rusev. Rusev, they were tag team partners, and he told him, hey, look, we're not buddies. Don't get it twisted. Once we handle our business here, I'm coming after you for the title. So I think that could be a match that a battle of nations. They were at one point in time in a stable, the League of Nations. So I think that match could garner some time at WrestleMania.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what you and I would book for WrestleMania, our fantasy matchups per se. We'll go ahead and start on the Raw side again. I would do for your main event Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship. This is what I would do to lead up to that match. I would put the title on Strowman at SummerSlam by either pinning Reigns or Joe. And then you keep him busy with feuds with Bray Wyatt at No Mercy, Samoa Joe at Survivor Series, Finn Balor at the December pay-per-view. And I'll touch a base on Finn one more time here in a second. And, maybe John Cena at the Royal Rumble. That's another big time match. Then Lesnar comes back, maybe Royal Rumble time. Maybe he has to settle an issue with Roman Reigns to earn the contendership for WrestleMania. And you have the match at WrestleMania. I think it's money. It's one of those big time feel matches that are worthy for an event like WrestleMania.
So my all-time, my fantasy match, I would have, honestly, I would have Roman Reigns versus John Cena. John Cena hasn't, as he stated on Raw, he hasn't headlined WrestleMania in about 4 or 5 years, which, there's other guys. Roman Reigns has been headlining the last 3. But I think that matchup of the guy that they're trying to replace, so you have the guy cemented as the carrying the company with the guy that you're trying to replace him with. I think that would serve as a better matchup. Plus, you give it time. You give this feud time to breathe. You give them time to develop promos, and you just build. Basically what he did with The Rock. He just starts calling them out. Time goes by, and then they start, developing a feud. Like, okay, this is old versus new.
I also would do Roman Reigns and Cena at Mania. Again, similar to Strowman and Lesnar. I get why they're doing it now with both available, and there's always the risk of injury down the line. But, No Mercy is just not the stage for one of the very few big money matches they have left.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think that it's just not enough time. Like, one good promo is not going to make me sit down for No Mercy, and I'm like, okay, I have to watch this match because of one promo 3 weeks ago. You gotta build some grit, build some resolve. You gotta basically force the fans to choose. Hey, these are two guys that you love to hate, so you're gonna have to ride with one of them and hate the other one. And you have to give the fans time, basically, for these wrestlers to sell themselves, for you to pick a side, and then really have a tension built up where, half the crowd is with Cena, half the crowd is with Roman Reigns. One of these guys is going to make it through the top.
Okay, so I would also do Finn Balor and Neville for the Cruiserweight Championship, with Finn Balor going in as the Cruiserweight Champion. And my thinking behind this is the Cruiserweight Championship right now, it's being booked to a weight class. And what it does is it limits them to how many people can compete for that title and the feuds that they can have amongst one another in that division. Instead of doing that, just book the title to a style of wrestling. Finn Balor can do the fast-paced, high-flying style. Neville can do the fast-paced, high-flying style, and they can also work a heavyweight style as well. We've seen Finn Balor in there with Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe, and he doesn't look out of place. So you put the title on someone like Finn Balor, and I think the fans can accept him as the kind of guy that can hang with the cruiserweights, and he can also hang with the upper card as well. I mentioned Strowman and Finn Balor at a December pay-per-view for the Universal Championship. Have him go in as the cruiserweight champion in that match as well, and I think that'll raise the importance of the title to the fans' eyes and give that division the much needed boost that it needs. I mean, besides adding Enzo Amore.
That's interesting. I think you're almost what TNA, or now it's Global Force Impact, what they did with the X Division.
Exactly.
Yeah, because at one point in time, AJ Styles was the X Division champion, but you could easily see AJ Styles going from the X Division champion to the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and it'd be believable. You could see AJ Styles doing the Pele kicks and jumping from the top of the ring, and then you can see him do the ground and pound against bigger dudes. That's not a bad idea for the Cruiserweight division. I have so if Big Cass can come back and be healthy, I think an interpromotional match between Big Cass and Baron Corbin, I think could do good for both of them. I think you have both guys, one 7 foot, the other one 6'8". They've worked very hard to develop their wrestling skills. They're both working their microphone skills, and they're coming along. And I think those two guys just kind of clashing together would, to me, be what the whole idea between the Big Show and Big Cass match should have been. Two towering, giants that are just fed up with each other, and they're just going to have it out at all costs.
So for my tag team championship match, I actually have an interpromotional match myself with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. I think they carry the titles all the way to Mania, put some prestige on those belts, and they go up against arguably the best tag team on the SmackDown side with the Usos, and have yourself a battle of the tag champions.
Man, you got me, because I was thinking the same thing. Title for title, or not title for title, but brand versus brand. Who when it's all said and done, who's the best tag team out there? And it works in the favor that the Usos are heels currently, and Rollins and Ambrose are both face. So you also have the good versus bad in it. So it's just a matchup that writes itself. I have, if Roman Reigns is not headlighting, I have like a Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe. These guys have mixed it up already in the ring in the Fatal 4-Way. And I think you can have those tensions kind of simmer a little bit, but still be bubbling in the background. And then finally them having it out. They're both of Samoan descent. They have the same culture, the same work ethic, and they're just tired of each other. There's not enough room at the top of the mountain for two Samoans.
I said earlier that I see WWE going with Bayley and Sasha Banks at WrestleMania, and I would do the same. I think the potential match that those two can put on can easily be in the run-in for match of the night, but it's all about how they continue to tell that story. They can add an extra layer in there with, say, Bayley's comeback story. If they hold her off for an extended period of time, that shoulder injury she suffered, she never got her chance at the women's title at SummerSlam, that shot that she earned. She wasn't able to cash in on that. So you can probably hold her off for a couple more months, bring her back, kind of tell a redemption story, maybe also tell the story of Banks not being able to defend her title if she comes in as the champion. You can do a couple of cool things there, but I think that's the match to make at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I have Bayley and Sasha Banks both in WrestleMania, but I think Bayley wins the title, let's say Royal Rumble, so she carries that title through Fastlane into WrestleMania, and then you have Sasha Banks, who they were friends, and maybe in Royal Rumble, or maybe she earns the title shot in Fastlane, and they go in as friends, and regardless of what happens, Bailey or Sasha Banks loses, and then that friendship kind of sours, and now it's screw our friendship, I want the belt. And I think Bailey gets her WrestleMania moment. I think Sasha Banks gets her WrestleMania moment. And you have two women that, were four horsewomen, were in NXT together, had their shot together, were friends, and now it's all about business. It's all about that title, nothing else.
Okay, for your SmackDown main event, I got Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens for the WWE Championship. And this is how I would get to that point. Kevin Owens turns face against Jinder Mahal and defeats Jinder for the WWE Championship. I wouldn't put it on Nakamura. Nakamura's not ready. Put that title back on Kevin Owens. And then, WWE doesn't do this often enough. Book to the town that you're in. So, for example, say at a Montreal SmackDown, Owens and Zayn, they, through some circumstance, team up and go up against Jinder and the Singh brothers. And after a long, grueling match, Owens and Zayn's win, and then they embrace one another. And I think the crowd will just eat that up. And then just when you think, they've kind of buried their differences, buried the hatchet, I guess you could say, Owens turns on Zayn right then and there. I think, again, the crowd will react properly. And, Zayn spends the remainder of the year vying for that title shot that Owens just won't give him. And, maybe Zayn wins the Rumble and they eventually meet up at WrestleMania. I think those two can just tear the house down.
Yeah, I like the idea. I think it works on paper. The only thing is you run the risk of basically emulating what Kevin Owens and Chris Jericho did on Raw.
Yeah, okay. I can see what you're saying.
And so, but again, there's more history here. These guys have been best friends for like 15 plus years. They came up together. So it may work and still be fresh. But you run the risk of basically seeing a repeat of what happened last year. But I like that idea.
So what do you got as your SmackDown main event?
It's kind of hard to say. I really think AJ Styles. I think AJ Styles is going to be headlining WrestleMania as the champion for SmackDown, especially based on his matchups last year. One idea I do like is, I guess, interpromotional. I'd like to see Bobby Roode take on Triple H.
That's a good matchup right there. I think those two could probably have a good match. And going back to AJ Styles, I actually have him still coming in as the United States champion, going against Shinsuke Nakamura. Somehow we end up with those two at WrestleMania. That's the match to make over there on SmackDown, like I said earlier. And let me go ahead and talk about the Andre the Giant Battle Royal real quick. Again, missing a lot of names on these fantasy matchups that we're spitting out here. And I think you make the Battle Royal the biggest it's ever been. I mean, this is WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, the site of WrestleMania 30, where the very first Battle Royal went down. I mean, you put all the previous winners in there. You make it as star-studded as you could possibly make it. And then you add an extra layer of importance by giving the winner a title shot the next night on Raw. And man, I would actually have Miz win that Battle Royal, probably through some underhanded tactics, some help or whatever the case may be. But he earns the championship match the next night on Raw when you have the most raucous crowd of the year.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think the winner of the 100 Memorial Battle has their push has faded. They really haven't done anything with them. I like the idea of Miz winning. A few years ago, when Miz headlined WrestleMania, I was talking with a friend of mine about this, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. I don't think the Miz was ready at that time, or at least his character wasn't ready at that time to headline a WrestleMania. I think his character now is ready to be a headliner at WrestleMania or other pay-per-views. And the only thing is, with those big dogs roaming the yard, it's going to be hard for him to get in there. So he sneaks in a title win. Let's say he sneaks in a title opportunity, sneaks in a title win. I think his character has developed far enough where he can maintain that level and headline, these pay-per-views and be a legitimate champion.
Yeah, I would put the title on Miz the night after WrestleMania. I think the reaction will just be phenomenal. And remember, I have Lesnar and Strowman for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. So we're talking Miz going over one of those guys. But of course, it has to be underhanded. There has to be shenanigans involved.
Yeah, the Miz Taraj.
Maybe not necessarily the Miz Taraj, but whoever costs the champion the match, that's going to be their next program. So, it's going to be one of those angles.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense. And it makes his heel character even that much more, because you got this guy who you just love to hate, and he keeps winning at all costs by cheating. The old school heel. I want him to grab tights. I want him to roll a guy over, use the ropes, have somebody holding his arms on the other end in order to keep that belt. If you're gonna do that.
So those were the big time matches that I would make at WrestleMania. Were there any other matches you wanted to go over, man?
Yeah, I finished out my fantasy card. I would like to see, in some way, shape, or form, maybe like, I keep coming back to this because it just makes too damn sense. Like a Samoan uh, faction, and let's go one even further. It doesn't matter what brand they're on. You just have one Samoan faction, period, and the Usos show up on Raw to back their guys, regardless of whether they're on the roster or not, and vice versa. And you have, in NXT, I believe they're called the Authors of Pain, if I'm not mistaken. I believe those two dudes are Samoan as well. So you look, a great opportunity to not you control all three shows with your Samoan faction, and you run roughshod and basically create another Shield, where they show up wherever they want to, do whatever they want to, and nobody's going to stop them. It's pretty much what I got so far, other than my biggest one being Batista versus Brock Lesnar.
Man, that's a hell of a match right there. And the more I think about it, the more sense it makes. The timing is right with the rumors of him going into the Hall of Fame, like you mentioned. That's definitely a marquee matchup that would attract the casual fan, with Batista having so much success in Hollywood.
And here's how you can set that up too. Why not have Batista? Let's say Brock Lesnar keeps the title into next year. You can have him at the Royal Rumble, come in, and either a Royal Rumble or Fastlane, and basically cost Lesnar the title. You can have him be a distraction and still have the other person come out looking strong with that distraction, and then have the Beast Incarnate's eyes focus on the immediate person right then and there, and then eventually come back to get his title.
So like we said earlier at the top of the show, this whole idea kind of came about when we were talking about the pay-per-views themselves and how many they try to fit in a calendar nowadays. Did you want to go ahead and touch base on that real quick?
Yeah, I'm looking at the calendar right now. So basically, to start this year, there's going to be 17 pay-per-views to round out the year. So you started with Royal Rumble in January, Elimination Chamber, which is a SmackDown, February, which is a Raw in March. I think why not just move both of those? If you're determined to have two, move them both into February. I know that coming off Royal Rumble, that's not going to give you a lot of time to set up feuds, but I mean, we've seen them do worse with less. So you move both into February, and that way you leave the entire month of March open for house shows to develop storylines, to develop feuds, and then that takes you all the way into WrestleMania. I like that idea.
Do you think it's necessary for the brands to have their own pay-per-views with just the big four as co-branded shows?
Honestly, you're on the WWE network. You're averaging about 4 hours anyways. Why not just make them pay-per-view where both, and have alternate who's headlining that particular pay-per-view at that point in time?
Okay, so I think we're on the same page here, because I think it's the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship that are hurt the most with the co-branded pay-per-views, because only one of them can headline, so the other has to take a back seat. So are you suggesting co-brand every pay-per-view and then simply either have the WWE or Universal Championship as the only main title that's defended on that particular night?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. They co-brand, just co-brand the pay-per-view and alternate who you have as headlining. And, hell, Raw went almost 2-3 pay-per-views without the title being defended.
I would get rid of all the shows that are named after a gimmick match. Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chamber, TLC. Get rid of all that shit. They're stupid names for a show, and it hinders your ability to book in certain situations. Case in point, Hell in a Cell. More than likely, we're going to be getting Nakamura and Jinder Mahal inside Hell in a Cell for the championship, and that feud doesn't warrant a stipulation of that magnitude. I don't want to see Nakamura in a fucking cage anyhow.
Yeah, I get you. Honestly, I think Money in the Bank should be retired.
We talked about that on our very first episode. Get rid of it. Maybe have the match every now and then. And this goes for all the gimmick matches. Have them occasionally. Maybe one big gimmick match a year. So say Elimination Chamber next year, then Hell in a Cell 2019, and so on. Allow the feuds to organically build to these types of matches instead of shoehorning half-hearted feuds into these situations. I'm not crazy about the name, but I really dug In Your House back in the day. I like the number system, and you can highlight the main event as part of the title to the pay-per-view.
Yeah, WCW did that with Starrcade. They had Starrcade 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Go into like a numbering system per se, where you just know that this is the next, and that way you don't pigeonhole yourself into specific style matches. For case in point, Extreme Rules. Like these matches, even though they're Extreme Rules, ain't nobody bleeding in the WWE. Nobody's taking chair shots like they used to. So uh, it really doesn't work with what the programming is right now. I agree with you 100%.
All right, so we're fixing to wrap it up right here. Was there anything else you wanted to touch base on real quick?
No, other than NXT Takeover Houston is right around the same time Survivor Series, so that should be fairly interesting to see who your next big guy is. Leading that NXT Takeover.
I don't see Drew McIntyre holding on to that title very long. They might have him hold on to it for a little bit before dropping it to Adam Cole, who I think they have big plans for. You don't debut him the way that you debuted him and not have plans for him to make a major impact. All right, man. So that's about all of our time today. We're going to have to do a follow-up episode next year after WrestleMania to see just how bad we blew it with our predictions.
We're gonna have to come back to it and see how close we were.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, okay, man. As always, much appreciate you taking the time out, and we'll holler at you later, man.
No problem, man. Take it easy, Triple R.
I'd like to thank Ant-Man once again for joining me on today's episode. You can check him out along with Alex Roy on the NTTB podcast. And please be sure to subscribe to the OSC Podcast Network on YouTube and Apple Podcast. We'll catch y'all next time here on The Clean Finish. Let's go home.
Hey, to all my fans out there, let it be known worldwide that Nature Boy, woo, is back up and running. Looking as only I can look. I want to tell all my fans out there, thank you for all the love, support, and I will see you in the very, 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 very near future. Woo!